am pleased to welcome everybody to the LTD Board of Directors work session. I'd like to call it to order. And we'll start with roll call. Gino is not here. Susan Cox, I'm here. Pete Knox.
Here.
Kelly Sutherland.
Here.
Lawrence Green.
Here.
Michelle Weber.
Here.
Heather Murphy.
Here.
Great, thank you. And I don't have any comments, except that I'm glad that everybody's here and we're looking forward to hearing from all the reports today. So, Cosette, you are tonight's Jameson.
I am, and Jameson though is with us, so he is prepared to give his remarks.
Well, good evening, board and everyone at the meeting. Sorry I couldn't be there with you, but I had to attend to something here in the Midwest. Just a few brief comments. I do want to acknowledge Cosette as well, sitting next to the board chair for the evening. Cosette just recently graduated from Leadership APTA. Leadership APTA is a 20-plus-year-old leadership program that's graduated 1,000 people that have taken on leadership roles throughout the organization. It's a prestigious program to get into. And by all accounts, our own Cosette Reese shined as bright or brighter than any of the other stars. So want to acknowledge her on that accomplishment. We were able to watch her graduate. Pete Knox, myself, and Michelle Weber, along with some of our staff, I was able to see her do that accomplishment while at the APTA conference. So I want to congratulate and acknowledge Cosette's hard work there. Speaking of APTA, we did attend the Transform Conference, which is APTA's annual meeting. It was the expo year, so there was a lot of vendors there, quite a few vendors. Over 11,000 people were in attendance there. We took the opportunity to identify different organizations and leaders within organizations to talk to get their experiences on areas of interest to LTD and to our community. So by all accounts, a successful trip to Orlando. I do want to call out Pete Knox has a new nickname, Mr. APTA. T-shirts will be made. He did a fantastic job. Michelle gets the copyright to that. Fantastic job just integrating himself into the APTA organization and really trying to bring those learnings back to our organization as well. So I want to acknowledge that, and I'm sure they may have some more to add during the board reports. And then finally, I do want to report to the board. I know an email was sent out. LTD, led by Tom Schwetz and others, was successful in procuring a $250,000 grant that will help us on a planning study as we move forward with our long range mobility plan. This is something that we had planned to do, something that we had to update, and getting this grant just helps us get there faster. So I want to congratulate staff on that, but also report that to the board. And with that, I'll conclude my comments. If you have any questions, happy to take them.
Congratulations on Tom. We heard about that last week, but Jameson, I think it's pretty obvious you've got amazing staff, and the fact that they're recognized within the industry and the community, I think is really exciting to be a part of. Also, there was a press release, I think, this afternoon about the finance report. So that's another well done and congratulations. So Cosette, do you have anything to add? Except just take all your bows.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for that, Jameson. I also just want to throw some kudos back over to Jameson. So Jameson was able to serve on some of the panels at APTA and share some of his experiences, and very well received. And Jameson is very well respected. Made me very proud. So.
Thank you. Okay.
You can tell we do each other's reviews, me and Cosette.
Okay, are there any announcements or additions to the agenda from anybody? Okay. So board member report, shall we start with Mr. APTA?
Thanks for that, and thanks, Michelle, for giving me that new moniker. for those who in the room who may not know what APTA is, it's American Public Transit Association. They are the industry group that helps bring us all together, transit agencies, vendors, and and consultants alike. This is and they also do a lot of lobbying for the transit industry as a whole. So this, as Jameson said, it was the big biannual expo where they had 1 million square feet of show space. There's buses. But really, for us, Michelle and I and Jameson and the staff who were with us, what a great crew. Making some connections. I am now on the legislative committee for APTA, which is that committee that works with with what kind of legislation is going to be APTA is going to be backing as far as transit oriented industry legislation at Congress. And some of you may know I ran for the board of APTA. I was this last year. I did not make the cut, and I have made it very clear in positioning myself to try again next year, and possibly being a speaker at 1 or 2 conferences next year. So that's all my show and tell.
Great. Well, congratulations. Are there any other board reports, committee reports? Nothing significant. Okay. So this is always one of my favorite times. It's Employee of the Month.
Oh.
Well, good evening, board. And it is, as Susan mentioned, it's such an opportunity and such an honor to recognize LTD employees. And I know that board member Cox mentioned how exemplary many of the LTD folks are here, and I'm about to introduce one tonight. So this is Amy Ansa. Amy has been probably the most prolifically nominated person at LTD for Employee of the Month. So it's great that we're able tonight to honor her for that. Amy came to us from another agency. So Amy had experience when she came to us, and she brought a caring and very customer oriented attitude with her. And we are so happy to have Amy with us. She's been driving for LTD since July of 2022. And again, since then, numerous accolades, both by bus riders and by bus operators. Yeah. And you will know if you've been on Amy's bus because she will make you feel absolutely welcome and at home. And she goes out of her way, and she's a caring person and really an exemplary bus operator. She really is the example of customer service. And we're so fortunate and so lucky to have her. And again, it's my honor to introduce your Employee of the Month, Amy Ansa.
Well, hello, everyone. Oh, let's see. Can I move this up a little bit? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I'm loud anyway. I do have a few words to say. First off, of course, I want to thank Cosette. Cosette has really taken me under her wing, and I really plan to be someone. I already am someone at LTD, but to be even more, and that's really important to me. And Cosette has really helped me with that, is shaping my directions. That's wonderful. Jameson is wonderful and amazing. He's made such a big difference since he's been here. And it's wonderful to be around people so inspirational as y'all. Y'all and our community, they mean the world to me. And yeah, this is the whole thanks to them. I couldn't do it without them. I really couldn't. We're just a bunch of buses without them. But I do have a prepared speech, and it's not very long, so I'm go ahead and do this real quick. By the way, thank you all for being you. That's very important to me. I say that to all my riders. I say I love all my riders, and I love all of you. I am so thankful and feel so fortunate that I'm able to work in transit every day. We all make such a big impact. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO or a new operator on the first day of training, a road supervisor, or one who cleans and fuels the buses, or somebody who works in customer service or in planning. You know, it was Mr. Rogers once said famously, always look for the helpers. And I'm proud to say that we are the helpers. I wish that we lived in a world where every child was issued a library card and a bus pass. I strongly believe that if you give them those two things, you give them the world. As transit professionals, we are in a very unique position to not only improve people's lives, but to also improve the world. We must not forget that we serve all people, not only the ones who meet our standards. There's this idea that I love. It's called radical hospitality. This is the belief that instead of requiring people to conform in order to be treated with kindness and respect and given the help they need, that we meet them instead where they are. We help them where they are. We help everyone. I believe this is a basic human right. And when we push others down, we also get dragged down with them. But when we lift people up, we also rise up with them. I also believe that there is so much good happening around us all the time. But at first, you might have to look for it. Once you start to, you will notice that it is around you more and more. And eventually, you will see that it has been everywhere, all along. And you won't even have to look anymore to see it in front of you. Our goal every day should be to use the transformative power of transit to create a more connected world. I believe that a more connected world is a safer world, a cleaner world, a greener world, a nicer world, a more equitable world, and a better world for everyone. I invite all of you to join me in working towards this every day in all that you do. It is not easy, but the good thing and the right thing are rarely the easy thing. This is what drives me, and I hope it's what drives you too. Together, we have the power to change the world. Thank you so very much. Oh yeah, let me introduce my family too. They're here, and I'll also introduce my my neighbor who's also here. When we first met, I just want to talk about my neighbor real quick while I got it on my mind. When we first met, I first met Eugene. I hadn't even started at LTD yet, and she introduced herself to me. And Marcy Pope, she used to be former operator of the year here. Used to work here, just a wonderful, amazing person. And I told her almost immediately that when I become operator or employee of the month, that I'm going to invite her. And look at me now. I'm here, and it's you can make it your dreams reality. And then my wonderful wife, of course, is Bethy. She's an amazing person, my inspiration. Just has the same wonderful passion and drive for people that I have. That's my son Tabor. He's 7. He goes to Cesar Chavez, and he's a beautiful, beautiful kid. My spitting image. Kestrel, who's 4, is just the light of my life, and I couldn't imagine my world without her. And she's just makes me smile every day. B, who is 15, and they're just growing into this amazing person that I fully expect to see, if not on the board of directors here, in Eugene City Council or Lane County Commissioner or anything like that. They're going to make everything come true. I just know it. And Quill, who is 13, is just so much like me. It's amazing. We are very similar, and they have this drive and this intense kindness that they show everybody every day. I'm so proud to have them as my family and have Marcy as my neighbor and my friend, and to be here with all of you. It means the world to me, and the community means the world to me. Thank you. Thank you for this honor and privilege. Thank you.
I'm the first recipient of Employee of the Year parking space, so I am going to wait
Right.
on Pennsylvania to get to park in that space.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, we have a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So Amy, this pen's for
Oh,
you,
it's beautiful.
and this certificate,
Oh,
this letter of appreciation,
you.
a little token.
You,
And I love these.
I'm already getting a frame for it. Yeah. I'm hanging up. It's so good.
Thank you. Congratulations. And don't you think, do you want a group picture with all of your little?
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay.
That would mean the world to me. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm gonna move the chairs.
Yeah. Okay. Pull it down like. Yeah, put it-
There you go. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. It's too bad she doesn't have any enthusiasm, right?
That's what we keep saying.
Oh, and understand why everyone on the bus loves her, so. Is there anyone who has signed up to speak at the meeting? Any audience?
We do have one member for public comment and
Okay.
they're in person, Bill
Okay,
Bradley.
great. Pop that, Bill.
Test. Good. All right. I'm Bill Bradley, ATU Executive Board Officer, representing the frontline workers here at Lane Transit District. I really just came here to double down on everything you already heard. The compliments that we get for Amy it's a cascade of compliments every month, and we just knew that Amy was going to break through and become Employee of the Month eventually. There was some rules that prevented her from getting there first year of employment, but as soon as she crossed over that bar, there was no doubt in my mind that she was going to be there. I've been serving in an employee recognition role here at LTD for over a decade. I've never experienced what I have experienced with Amy and what I see every month coming across my email box in terms of the appreciation from the public and from her coworkers for the work that she's doing. Just very proud to represent somebody like Amy, what she does for this community. It's very impressive, and just want to make sure that we totally recognize Amy, and I know you guys did a wonderful job, and I hope we can continue to recognize people like Amy, that this attitude of positivity that Amy brings to the workplace every day is contagious, and I hope it really does spread. I know we're trying to stop some spread, but this spread would be a good one to continue to move around. So just here to double down on that one. Really proud of Amy and representing Amy. And so I'm happy to see Amy get recognized.
Thank you. It's a good tribute to all the rest of you too, so thank you both. Is there anybody else? Okay then. So we're going to talk about the fiscal audit, and Joe and Edie. Yeah, okay, thank you.
So the first step in the audit is for our auditors to explain what they're going to be doing during the audit and to inform the board of their purpose and what their plan is for the year. So that's what they are going to present tonight. We have two of our auditors, Joe Escobar and Ahmed Gareba. And I'm going to, I've had a little bit of a busy week this week. I think they'll know why. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves as they do their presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having us. We are actually the new auditors for the district, and I do have a PowerPoint presentation here with me. I can go ahead and share it on my screen if that would be acceptable. All right, thank you. So as I mentioned, my name is Ahmad Garaibe. I will be the partner in charge of the audit. And with me, I have my senior manager, Joe Escobar. He will be in charge of the audit. We are actually heading out to the district, and we will be at your district offices this coming week. Continue to work with the district for the next 2 or 3 weeks after. I will have also a crew that will be working on this audit. One of which is a senior associate that had been assisting us throughout in auditing transit districts alongside with staff who are planned to be there for the audit. Next slide, please. And so the scope of the audit, this is a financial statement audit, and the scope of the audit is to ensure that the financial statements are fairly stated. The district does produce what they call an annual comprehensive financial report, which has a little bit more of extra information that you would typically see within a basic set of financial statements. Typically is submitted to an entity called GFOA that reviews it to ensure that it adheres to the accounting and reporting standards. So this is the main scope of the audit here, is to ensure that these financial statements are fairly stated. And again, we come in after the fact. It is management's responsibility to ensure that these financial statements are fairly stated. Effectively, it'll be an affirmation of the financial information that is presented to you by management. Along with that, you do have a couple of pension plans in there, one for the salaried employees and the other one is for the ACU. Alongside with some of the estimates related to these pension plans, the pension liabilities, so this is also within the scope of the audit. You are a recipient of federal funding and you are a government, so you are required to have an audit referred to as government auditing standards, in which we take a look at the internal controls. We'll take a look at the manner that we process receipts, the manner that we process payroll, the manner that we process internal controls. Transits are receiving or have been receiving quite a bit of some federal funding. Section 5307 is predominantly the program that this district probably is receiving, so that will be also subjected to the federal compliance audit. You receive state funding for the transportation improvement funding from the state of Oregon. Similar with other transit districts in the state of Oregon, they are required to undergo what they call agreed upon procedures. Alongside with that, we audit the NTD, which is a ridership reporting. This is what determines your 5307 allocation from the feds. And so this is something that we are incorporating into our audit procedures. They call them internal agreed upon procedure engagements. And so again, our responsibility is to ensure that the financial statements are fairly stated. We obtain reasonable assurance. We don't test everything. It's a focus on material items. That's what we typically do, alongside with testing a sample of smaller items. We also will take a look at your internal controls, as I mentioned, receipts, disbursements, payroll, your policies, the implementation of those policies as well. And then as well as expressing an opinion on federal compliance. And we'll let you know if we had any adjustments, statements, if we noted any, if we had any disagreements with management. Typically that doesn't happen, or any difficulties that we will encounter in the audit, or we don't anticipate that. Management has been very responsive. We've already began preparing for our visit, and they have been working with us in ensuring that we receive the documentation that we will need. Next slide, please. So because we are the new auditors there for this district, we typically change the dates, but you'll see the dates that are applicable for the 23 audit. We already began the planning for the audit for the 23 financial statements. The plan is to begin the combination of the interim and the final field work over the next 3 weeks. And then we'll come back to you with the reporting phase, in which we will tell you whether the financial statements are fairly stated or not, and finalize that opinion on both the statements and the single audit sometime in December. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joe for the next slide, please.
Thanks so much. So every year in connection with our audit, we plan and make a appropriate considerations of new GASB statements, which may be implemented by the district during the course of the fiscal year under audit. In the current year under audit, GASB 96 subscription-based information technology arrangements will be effective July 1st, 2022 through the year end date June 30, 2023. The implementation of the standard could have an impact on beginning that position. Additionally, we make appropriate considerations of potential and known significant estimates which may relate to taxes receivable, net pension, and net other post-employment benefits. These significant estimates commonly involve the usage of management specialists, which provide actuarial valuations for the liabilities and fiduciary plan to represent the net amount on the financials of the district and fiduciary plan financial statements. An estimate related to taxes receivable would involve the district's management's best efforts to approximate the accrual at year-end. Key audit areas of risk are revenue recognition and defined benefits plan distributions, the appropriate recognition of revenue related to payroll taxes and grants, including federal transit administration awards. Distribution will be tested for accuracy and valuation with considerations made to appropriate related controls as it relates to financial statement presentation.
With that, we will be more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? We look forward to meeting and working with you.
Thank you.
Okay. So Tom is going to. Again, congratulations, Tom, on getting the funding for.
Thank you. I just noticed that the CPM grant program of the state has been around since the mid-90s, and I was able to write the CPM grant for the first long-range transit plan back in 2010. So we got some resources for that, and so I'll do that process as well. So that's what I want to accomplish a couple of things. One is to provide a general overview of where we're at with the Reimagine the Ride process, but then to specifically get into the status of the community outreach and communication successes for COCA. And then John's going to follow up with an update on the status of the Ride Source services. To start off, some of you may have heard me talking about the editorial in the July 1st, 1950 June weekly dollars that stated the die will be cast for or against the building of the city here and the acceptance or rejection of a proposal now pending before the council. And what they're referring to was a proposal to build what at the time was called a street railway, or what we would call today a streetcar system. I got that information. You can actually go online on the City of Eugene's website and find the minutes from the city council meetings going all the way back to the 1890s, I believe. Yeah. So I was able to find this discussion in the thread of the council. They're handwritten, so it's an interesting challenge to try and kind of read through what happened. But what was interesting is if you understood everything that was going on in terms of city building, which the editorial refers to, in Eugene at the time, you'd understand that the editorial was actually an overstatement. In fact, the die had been cast with the investments being made in paving streets, funding water and sewer lines, the railroad connections that were being developed connecting Eugene to the rest of the world, the presence of the University of Oregon, the bridge connecting Eugene and Springfield was key. Franklin Corridor has been the key corridor in this region ever since that time. And then there were even initial conversations about being part of a telephone telegraph network and on and on. So my point of sharing that is that we're beginning a process called Reimagining the Ride. And I want us to keep in mind that there's a number of things that are happening here today in that context that's actually going to be supportive of that and which we're going to be able to connect to and support as well. In terms of mobility options and the ability in our local context. And so a dynamic that we can count on moving forward can be summarized in the wisdom that tells us everything changes, everything is interrelated, pay attention. And really, I would say that our Reimagine the Ride process is intended to help us pay attention. So as of today, with respect to the Reimagine the Ride process, we have procured and kicked off the community outreach assessment project, which I'm going to talk about more tonight. The Right Source Service Review, like I said, John's going to be updating you on that tonight. The LTD Service Review, or COA, and then the Mobility Management Framework Project. So we'll be coming back with more detail on those, but like I said tonight, what I'm going to talk about is the COCA project. And so you might recall one of the central parts of that project is the formation of a community steering council made up of representatives from the community that we serve. And it's a good group. And in the packet, I provided an outline for a table showing the membership. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at it. It looks like this. And be willing to talk if you have questions about the membership makeup. I would note that the chair is Amber Kallel, who's listed at the top of the page, and then the vice chair is Daniel Padilla. And so they've been really good. And part of our process has been meeting with them in planning these meetings moving forward. In fact, we just had a meeting today. Pat and I and Andrew participated in that, talking about the agenda for the next meeting. So the COCA project, again, is intended, well, first of all, you might recall that we're using a firm called InfraStrategies out of LA. They're a great group. Joshua Shank is the principal in charge of the project. If you're not familiar with Joshua, one of the key things that I found very intriguing about having him on the team is he actually introduced mobility management to LA Metro. So kind of big time in that regard. And so it's going to be useful to have him. We also are asking him to participate in the Mobility Management Framework project as well. But with respect back to the COCA project, we have a process set up. And again, the work program was attached, and I'm happy to go through the details if you're interested. But basically, what it's driving to is at the end to have them, the CSC, actually provide the inputs to that framework, that communications framework that we're trying to create. That's the primary product of this effort. And again, I would characterize the first two meetings. So we're going to have the third meeting next Wednesday at the same time as this meeting is tonight. And I would characterize the first two meetings as if you're familiar with the term storming and norming. That group has gone through that process. It's a well-rounded group, both geographically and any other way you want to kind of slice and dice it. It's representative of our community, I think. And they're going to be working on, again, as I said, this framework that's going to allow us to really, I think the way I would put it is our communication and how we do think are going to be informed by that framework, but then also create a kind of standard look and feel, if you will, of our communication in a way that may not exist today. If you look at the long-range transit plan, that's the look and feel of that is a little bit different than what Pat might want, or engineer what the consistent communication across these various might look like. The budget might look like the CIP. There's various things. The way we communicate is intended to be more consistent across things, but also I think the intent is, again, you've heard us use the term co-creating. This this framework is going to help us do more co-creating with our community. And again, that's essential to answering that question of the community. So you have the information here. I don't need to go into a lot more detail at this point, but if you have any questions, I'd love to.
No questions, congratulations. It is a good group. There's good representation. Pete?
Yeah, I agree with, it is you have an excellent group. How far along in that process are you about halfway through?
So if you look at this table, you'll be, and I figured out in my we finished the first 2 meetings, and so thank you for calling that out, Steve, because on the table it shows the next meeting will actually be would have happened on October 11th. Some people on the committee couldn't meet that, so we basically pushed the schedule out, and so the third meeting is actually the date that shows for the fourth meeting. Everything's been out a week, so the last meeting is actually September 13th. And by that time, at this point, I'm not going to say that we need to meet more, but if we need to, we will. But the point is that at the end of that process, we will be able to take the input and conversations that the committee has had to, again, create that framework. And so the consultants will go back and do draft, we'll be working with them through this. And the idea is to bring this back, go to the FCC, brief them on their keeping them up to speed on this process as well. Probably in the February, March timeframe, we'd be asking, I'll tell you that in the February, continue at the end of the month, we're asking the FCC to provide a recommendation to the board, and then we have the board adopt it.
That's excellent, thank you.
I do have one question. When I look at the the committee, I know that LTD transition really hard to achieve the diversity of the community and population. So what was the process for the selection on this committee?
Good evening. I'm Pat Walton, LTD's Chief Marketing Officer. First of all, to begin, we started this process with a series of one-on-one community interviews. Our consultants came in and talked with people from across the community and from across communities within our community to help build the foundation for what it is we can work with COCA, our CSC. We went ahead and began to recruit members. We did it a couple of different ways. One, we took a broad approach, of course, with social media and email messaging, and really worked to identify people and connect people to communities where we felt we needed representation on that board. So with that group, that's what we were able to achieve. We ended up with 70 plus applicants to be on the committee based on the 20 people we felt we could, 20 spots we could work with. In addition to the CSC, we've also doing a community survey to get more information from a broader group of people. And that survey is in English and Spanish to be able to get a much bigger view of what it is the community needs from us. And then we're also talking about, at this point, making sure that we do some panel discussions with other parts of the community who maybe aren't as represented on our group and in other groups in the community as strong as they should be. So we're working very hard to reach out to make sure we've got all of our bases, not just covered, but we're not only listening, but we're hearing what people have to say regarding their transportation system.
So I'm hearing really good comments about the conversations that are being had in this committee, but at this point, can you share some of the themes that may be emerging at this point?
You know how I would answer that, Michelle, is that as you might expect, heard that community talk about things, we're hearing some of those same things. And we'll be able to share more of the specifics. I mean, we haven't just compiled all that yet, but it's a good, you know, I would say from my experience working in the city for 30 years, or this community, I should say, we're hearing a lot of the themes that I've heard over that time brought up. And I think that's really helpful in terms of, I mean, you're getting a business perspective, you're getting you know, a student's perspective, you're getting, it's a really cross representational group. And I think that's why I was saying that, you know, that the first two meetings have been this kind of storming and normally getting to know each other. And I should say InfoStrategy's process has been really good in terms of engaging them in different ways and different topics. And now these remaining 4 meetings are really going to be focused on, again, what does that framework look like? Who needs to be involved? Who, you know, how do we set things up for success?
You know, I think the exciting thing is that people want transit. And it's not that they want less, they want more. And they want us to be able to provide that service, but they also want to have a say in how that works. And so that's really what we're learning through this process as to how to balance that, to make sure that we maximize our resources that the taxpayers are providing us, and that we're able to provide the service based on the resources we have available to do it. But I think the overriding message, and we have some folks in the committee that are fairly critical of us too, which is important to have, that are concerned about, you know, they don't ride the bus. Why should I have to pay taxes to do, you know, for a service I don't use? Well, there's a lot of services we pay for that we don't use, but those are the types of things, comments we need to hear, and we need to factor into some of the work that we're doing. Like I said, overriding comments are, we need more of this. And we'll see where we go by the end of the process, but that's where we are after a couple of meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I know that, you know, when you look at this group, there is a lot of diversity. So I appreciate that explanation, because it clearly was deliberate. No, it wasn't by accident.
Thank you.
As I think we can agree, it's been a weakness in terms of our relationship with the community, and having this broad spectrum to have buy-in, I think it's really good. So, and it sounds like this isn't stopping. You're going to continue the outreach. So
That's continue. Absolutely.
Good. Any other questions?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be back.
Okay. So resource service review, John?
Do you want me to join you? Okay. I'll hang out. Unfortunately.
All right, thanks for having me, everyone. I'm John Allen in Accessible and Customer Services. We're going to be talking about the RideSource service review today. We're also joined virtually by Hart McDowell, to keep an eye for his virtual hand if he wants to add my comments today. Today's intended to be an informational session, but we're excited to welcome your feedback and questions. I'm going to make sure to save some time for that at the end. If you wanted to go to the next slide, let's talk a little bit about the what and the why of what we're doing today. So first of all, let's say RideSource services are robust, and that's a bit of an understatement. So we're doing approximately 400,000 trips a year under this service. We're serving tens of thousands of people under a large umbrella that we're calling the RideSource services. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those are, but I wanted to note it's important that we be intentional in the way that we plan towards the future. So there's two other ways that we could approach this and do. One is we do surveys that give us a snapshot at any moment in time of what we're doing. So we regularly poll our ridership. We say, how are we doing? We welcome feedback. We try and make improvements that way. That gives us that kind of moment in time incremental improvement that we can do. We also do comprehensive analysis. So, you know, in the past, we've done Transit Tomorrow. We've got the COCA project. We've got a comprehensive operations analysis on deck that'll be happening in parallel to what we're talking about today. But one of the lessons that we've learned is that Both of those processes kind of ignore the magnitude of RideSource as its own service that requires a thorough analysis to help us plan for the future in a strategic way. So that's what we're attempting to accomplish with what we're branding as the RideSource Service Review. And you may have heard this previously called things like RideSource Operations Analysis or ROA. And we wanted to very specifically and intentionally kind of differentiate that from the comprehensive processes that we're doing, looking at LTD as a whole and saying, this is the type of program we need to really also have a focus on to look at how we can strategically plan towards the future to help us to be able to innovate and be effective and efficient with the resources that we use. So that's not just now, but going into the future. And that requires some hard work on all of our parts. So this is the beginning of that work that we're coming to you with today. So if you don't mind going to the next slide, please. The RideSource umbrella, it has a wide variety of different services. Essentially, there's a call center with one phone number that members of the public call. For people that aren't served by our fixed route bus service, we have many different programs, and it's up to us to figure out how can we most efficiently and effectively get somebody where they need to go. That might be using other types of vehicles, might be other types of programs. We might subsidize those using grants. We try and make it as cheap and easy for end users as possible and give them as many different transportation options as possible, where fixed route bus might not ordinarily work for them. With all those different programs, there's not going to be enough time for me to talk about all of them, and you may have heard me talk about many of those in the past, but I'll mention the two largest. One is our paratransit ADA service. This is a federal requirement. Anytime we have a fixed route bus system, we need to be able to serve anyone who lives within 3/4 of a mile who, due to the nature of their disability, is unable to access the bus. The other is we choose to participate in Medicaid non-emergency or non-emergent medical transportation in our area. So that gets subsidized through Oregon Health Authority and our local coordinated care organizations to have Medicaid paid trips to help get people to medical appointments, doctor's appointments, dialysis appointments, seeing specialists, being able to access healthcare. Those make up the vast majority of the trips that we typically do, all housed under one call center, which is fairly unique to our community. It also means that we're able to do more here than we ever could if these were all separate programs housed by different agencies or coordinating organizations. So we have something special in our community. However, it's very complex. There's all of these intertwining relationships that kind of build off one another to be able to make this work and build this interconnected transportation network aimed at particularly at serving older adults and people with disabilities. Next slide, if you don't mind. So even though we're looking at RideSource very specifically, I do want to note that doesn't mean that we're going to be looking at every transportation program, and notably some of our rural programs, Roadie Express in Florence, Diamond Express in Oak Ridge, some of our services in South Lane County, services that we coordinate through Lane Council of Governments, some of our mobility on demand programs and upcoming pilot projects. They're not particularly area of focus as part of the RideSource Service Review. However, I do also want to note they're not forgotten. So these are going to be part of parallel or coordinated efforts and part of our Reimagine the Ride as a whole at LTD. So we are looking for ways that we can innovate, we can try new things. Some of those may be best housed under the RideSource umbrella, some not. I think those are some of our things that we'll be continuing to explore, but we're not specifically expanding the scope beyond, say, our RideSource umbrella. But we are looking at what kind of programs are best housed here. What kinds of things should we be thinking about when we're reimagining the ride? So I just wanted to know what kind of clearly is within our scope of work as part of this, or where you may hear through other presentations or projects. Next slide, if you don't mind. So we're going to be spending most of our time tonight talking about the next two slides. One, what you come to expect in the future, and then we're going to focus on the draft PI plan that's been in your packets. So there's very specific milestones that are associated with this project. So we're contracted with the consultants through Fair and Peers to assist us with these efforts. This is a very thorough review of our services, which begins with outreach, making sure that we're talking with the right people, fully including our community in the work that we're doing, Also means that meetings like this are important, but by no means going to be where our outreach stops. We're going to be talking with many different groups, including riders, groups that represent riders, people with disabilities, groups that represent people with disabilities, nonprofits. I'll get more into that when we talk about our public involvement plan. Following that, and expected in our draft timeline to complete in November, is a baseline analysis of RideSource operations, as well as performance benchmarks. So that's looking both within our community and at comparables throughout both Oregon and through the country, to be able to get an idea of how are we doing here? What are we doing differently? How do we measure our performance? Is there information that we need to be measuring that we're not currently? And how does that compare? So kind of a thorough technical analysis using both quantitative and qualitative data is going to be part of this. We're also going to do a review of key challenges and a comparison of best practices. So not just looking at metrics, but what informs them? What are the policies and procedures in place? Those can be very complex. We have some choices that we get to make. So one of the things that we're very proud of is that we often aren't doing just the bare minimum required of us by law. We think of ourselves as, how can we best serve our community? How can we best help get people where they need to go? How can we connect our community? So there are decisions that have been and will need to continue to be made to be able to inform those. Some examples of things that we might be looking at include, what's the right size and shape of our vehicle fleet and propulsion type? So do we want to be looking at things like transitioning to electric vehicles? The very nature of our service is that we often need to go places where a 40-foot or a 60-foot bus doesn't fit. We need to be able to get to people's homes. We need to be able to get down narrow alleys. We need to be able to get in the parking lots of medical facilities. How do we best do that? So oftentimes you'll probably see RideSource and LTD branded cutaway vehicles throughout town. But often those might not be the perfect solution either. New technologies are emerging that we're continuing to evaluate. So finding what's the right size and shape of our vehicle fleet and how can it best adapt to evolving and changing needs may be a question that we need to explore more thoroughly. We also are looking at what are the different types of programs and opportunities out there, particularly as we position ourselves as a leader in mobility management in our community and county. What does that look like? What are the programs that we want to choose to include? Is there things that we just want to say that we don't do? Doing that in a strategic way rather than just tacking on one more program or finding a grant that we find a way to shoehorn into RideSource, actually being strategic and saying, this is what we do and this is how we do it, and how can we be the best stewards of these resources and deploy them in a more strategic way, I think is a question that we'll be exploring in more depth. We also have a very complex network of both contractors and subcontractors and LTD employees that make all of this happen. And so looking at that and rather than saying we're going to continue to do what we have been doing because it's been working, saying what would actually work best when we look at this in a more strategic manner. So those are just some examples. We're going to be doing quite a bit of work. So it's going to take us, we're estimating about a year. We have some flexibility built in if things change, but we will be continuing to check in with everyone along the way. So we see communication as the baseline for getting any good work done. So this is the first of many times you'll likely be hearing from us on how this develops. We're also going to be assisting with the development of a program evaluation framework. So when you really put this on paper, how we're evaluating the metrics and what criteria we're evaluating, saying, what is success? How do we know if we're doing a good job? What are the measurement tools that we're using to make that happen? An example I'll use, we have a wildly successful shopper shuttle. It helps get people where they need to go in group trips rather than us sending a bunch of independent vehicles all going the same way. We can say, looking at it from our snapshot data, this is going well, we should do more of it and include expansion programs. And that's exactly what we're doing. We say, if we've got a full bus, let's get another one. But we could be more strategic in the way that we make those kinds of judgment calls. Are there other programs that would benefit even more from using the same resources and vice versa? Are we pulling away from something that could be really successful? So we need to look at how we're evaluating all these little sub-programs under the RideSource umbrella and be able to strategically analyze them. We're also going to explore some key questions that come up through a technical analysis and stakeholder feedback. So that's hearing from folks like you, folks all throughout our community, to be able to let us know what are the right ways that we can serve our community, what are the right questions we need to be asking and exploring. We can't just do that ourselves. We have some good ideas, but we exist in service to our community, and so we need to make sure that we're asking that of our community as well. That's where the public involvement plan is going to really come in, culminating in a final report and recommendation for our evaluation. So we're looking forward to getting that done over the course of the next year. And if you don't mind going to the next slide. You have the PI plan draft in your packets. And again, I'm going to welcome feedback and any questions that you might have about it. But I want to say the most important thing that we do is make sure that we're talking to all the right people. So that's going to include community organizations. That's going to include partner agencies that we're working with. It's going to include internal committees. And each of those in turn all contains their own groups and subgroups. So we're trying to cast a very wide net in how we're accomplishing this. Just to give an example, some of our initial interviews that are taking place are going to include Lane Independent Living Alliance, Lane Council of Governments will be working closely with Senior Disability Services. We're going to be working with Veteran Services through Lane County. We're going to be working closely with Alternative Work Concepts, a nonprofit that we work with who does travel training and supported employment. And then beyond that, we know that there's more work to continue to do with public involvement. Going back to the motto of nothing about us without us within the disability community, we want to make sure that we are reaching out and working closely with our ridership and groups that represent them. So we know that we'll be working with SPC. We know we'll be working closely with our RideSource Advisory Committee, an internal administrative group. We already are doing some surveys and we're planning more just specific to these efforts. We're going to be working with both focus groups and discussion groups that we're going to be bringing together specifically as part of these efforts. And then we're going to have technical workshops that include some of our technical partners, which include coordinated care organizations through Medicaid, RideSource itself, and of course, the different organizations and nonprofits that we're already working closely with. This will all culminate more in a summary report for our review, just based on the types of feedback and questions and thoughts and concerns and complaints that we get along the way. So if you don't mind with the next slide, that gives us a little bit of time to do any questions or feedback that you might have that help inform this effort. And Hart, if you had anything to add that I might have missed, please do include.
Thank you. You have a big job ahead of you. That's good. Is there a tie-in between COCA and the two programs?
Maybe I can speak to that.
Okay.
So, as you know, we're furthest along with the COCA project, and that's intentional. We wanted to start that one out first. As soon as that project is wrapped up and we have this draft framework, we're obviously going to take it to SBC and the board. Once that's formally adopted, we're going to push that framework out into the to both the RideSource service review, the LTD service review, and the mobility management framework. So, and again, those projects are still, I would characterize them as in the ramping up mode. So I think we'll be able to really use that framework well. And that's really, I would say, the connection between the COCA and these other projects. Is that?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions? We're getting such good information.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
We'll be back.
Counting on that. So.
Thanks to everyone.
Now we're going to strategic plan report with Amy. And I heard her say, Pete, did she not? She wanted hard questions.
I said, don't go easy on them.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. So this is in your packet tonight. This is our refreshed strategic plan. Just as a reminder, our strategic planning process, we started in 2021, developing a really robust strategic plan, including mission, vision, values, the foundational pieces that make a really good plan. And then every year since, we've done a refresh on the tactical work. So we're not spending a ton of time re-examining our mission, vision, and values. That's foundational. We can stand on those, but we do know that the work has to change. Even tonight, I was doing crossouts on this plan that's finalized for this year because work is dynamic. We need to be dynamic with it. And that's the approach we're taking. And what you're going to see in our refreshed plan really represents that. It's a simplified plan. And what I'm going to go through with you tonight is the highlights. I've literally gone through and highlighted what I think we really want to focus in on together. So as I mentioned, the foundation remains the same. We're connecting the community. We have foundational values that we try to process all of our work through. You know, what is it? What's in this work? Is it about innovation? Is it about equity? Is it about both? Where do they come together? So we're trying to have those values conversations as we develop our work. The other thing is that we're really thinking of this as it's an action plan. We're in the phase of strategic execution. You know, we've done the planning, now we need to get work done, and that's what this plan is. It's really meant to be our North Star, right? To be in good North Star, compass, was a compass analogy. I like to go out in the woods, so I'm gonna use a compass analogy. A compass needs to be pretty simple, right? We all need to be able to pick it up and use it. We know we wanna orient ourselves to north. So hopefully everybody's used a compass, but you have to orient yourself to north with the compass, right? So we tried really hard to simplify this version of the plan. It's normal when you embark on a strategic planning journey. Your first plan has a lot of tactics. We had that. We had over 30 tactics. It's not that any of that work wasn't important. It all was, but it wasn't really helping us focus in on the strategic priorities. And so through iteration over the last several years, I think we've really come to a place with this plan where we've honed in. We've got 9 tactics. I'm going to go through those with you here. And underneath of that, there's a ton of work that's happening that we'll be reporting to you along the way. One other thing I want to highlight before I get into the actual plans that we've mapped out. In this version of the plan, we've gotten really concrete about what strategic execution means for LTD. So we have a model. It's really simple. Each strategic plan has an assigned sponsor, and that sponsor is responsible for financial, resource, and other support. And then each tactic has an owner. So each strategic activity has an assigned business lead from our executive team. So we're getting really specific about taking accountability through our model and ownership of the work. And then we also have this model. There's this nice visual here. Like I said at the beginning, we've kept our values. We have our strategic focus areas: customer satisfaction, employee engagement, financial health, sustainability. It's all really tied into the community value, the value that we're trying to deliver to the community. And you can see we've broken work down into these kind of 3 tiers. So the foundational work is what we stand on. Relationship and values is where we develop the connections within the community to know what they really need us to be. That's what you're hearing about consistently in these sessions. And then the transformational work of becoming the community mobility provider. So let's get into the work. Our first work plan here is called Increase Revenue Service Levels by 10% from fiscal year 2023 baseline. So what that actually means is adding approximately 24,000 revenue service hours, specifically looking at our NTD reported fixed route. So if you look at the work outlined here, it's actually recruitment and retention work. So we have a revenue service hour outcome that we're seeking, and we recognize that to get there, we're going to have to really invest in our recruitment and retention strategy because it takes people to operate our vehicles. Okay, next, we have implement our communication process for public engagement. This is COCA. You've heard all about that tonight. I don't need to say more. The work is underway. Next up, we have develop a sustainable long-term financial model for LTD. This has been called out a few times, but just to state specifically, we just got this award. It's the financial certificate, the financial excellence certificate from the government Office of Financial Accountability. It's 27 years in a row that we've had that recognition. So we take our financial reporting seriously here at LTD, and the long range financial plan is part of that. And I'm happy to report that we're on track with these goals. And they're also tying in those revenue service hour goals that I mentioned earlier. So we're trying to weave the work together. All right, next up, we have develop internal strengths. Amy, we just go full circle on this night. Amy Anza, I think, is a great example of that. That's what we want to develop. You know, Bill Bradley was here and he mentioned that's the kind of culture that we want to create. Positivity. We want people to be excited to show up to do this work. Next, we have improve the perception of security of LTD services by 5%. What does that mean? So we're using by 5% here. We're looking at our annual ABBG customer satisfaction data. And specifically, this impression or perception of security includes two metrics: the impression of safety while on the bus and the impression of safety while waiting for the bus. And to improve that, we have to go from a 75% to an 80% and a 70% to a 75%. So I highlight that. I don't know if those numbers sound high or low to you. I think they're good based on the research that I've done. But the point is we're trying to go incremental here. We're setting realistic targets for ourselves in our strategic execution strategy, the meta strategy. So we're keeping it real. All right, report LTD outcomes in relation to community priorities. So we haven't finalized these yet, but I know we're looking at things like housing. We need more housing in the community. How does transit fit into that? The unhoused population, economic development, workforce development, healthcare and education. These are the things that are coming to the top of the list for our community. And so we want to think about how we're reporting out to the community through those priorities. Implement strategy to community accountability. This is all about how executive team has to sample the service. We need to be out there riding. Attendance at neighborhood meetings. Our website work, that's underway. So it's how are we conveying what we're doing to the community and creating that transparency. Implement strategy for achieving our disadvantaged business enterprise. I think this board has heard some about our disadvantaged business enterprise. This work is also underway. Not a lot to say there other than this is a really important big goal that we need to try and meet. And so we have to do it together. And that's why I've included it here in the strategic plan. And then last, but obviously certainly not least, we have transitioned into the Lane County Mobility Manager by 2025. You heard about a lot of that work already. The COA, our Comprehensive Operations Analysis, the Ride Source Service Analysis, our Mobility Management, both task force and framework. There's just a ton of work that has to go into this. I actually, as we were meeting tonight, I crossed out transit here. This is going to change to mobility plan, the long range mobility plan that we now have funding for. So a lot of work and action in our transformational domain. But I do want to go back as I wrap up all those plans to this pyramid. When things starts to get sticky, we need to remember our foundation. And that's why we broke the work out like we did, because we know there's going to come a point in time where we have competing priorities between a plan or an analysis that we're doing and a recruitment and retention strategy. And we're going to need to make decisions about how to prioritize. And so that's what having this model does for us. It allows us to always come back to the foundational things that are going to help us to continue to develop. So the last thing I want to share with you as part of all of this, we already had a dashboard, have presented it to this board before. It's been recently updated. It's more visually pleasing to the eyes, and I am going to open it here for y'all tonight. This is the beginning of a journey for LTD where we're really trying to take business intelligence into everything that we do through a continuous improvement mindset and the work that we're performing every day. This is a start. So what you see here are kind of some core key performance indicators, KPIs that represent how we're doing. I'm going to give you an example of how we're using this. So customer satisfaction, you see here we have on-time performance. We're at 91%. Means on-time performance, 91%. There's a whole definition underneath of that. I'm not going to get into it, but we do have a specific way we measure that consistently every quarter. So we're down 3% quarter over quarter. So what this causes us to do is think, okay, well, what's going on? So I can go into the data exploration here and I can find my metric, on-time performance. And I'm actually going to just call this metric out. I know it's customer satisfaction. So we're going in here and we're looking at on-time performance. We're at 91%. Okay, our goal is 90%. So we see our goal here is 90%. So we're actually doing better than our goal, even though we're down. That's good news. And then there's also a way to look at this, comparing ourselves to other parts of the country. So if we look at on-time performance, this is last quarter, we're at 94%. Okay, we're still above the national average, which is 87%. So this is just giving you a little bit of a snapshot where we can get curious what's going on. In this particular instance, I'm digging in, I'm seeing, okay, you know, it's on our radar. On-time performance is down a little bit right now. There's probably an explanation. We're still above goal. So the last step here is, okay, let's just dig in and make sure we really understand. Here's our on-time performance over time, as we've been measuring through the strategic business plan. And I'm saying, oh yeah, you know, this is kind of going down. We're coming towards our line. I'm not worried because we're above our goal, but let's figure out what's going on. So this is an exercise we did recently, just to look at what is going on here. And I think this is going to be familiar to folks. There's some pictures here of traffic, construction. This picture here, there's a LTD shelter that's behind a fence. So I don't think anybody's using that one right now. So there's a ton of construction out there. I think everybody can relate to that. That actually affects our on-time performance. So that's something that's happening. And then we also had this really happy thing happen where we had 10 new operators that graduated at the end of August. That's awesome. It also means our on-time performance goes down. So we may expect to see that as we're emphasizing recruitment, retention, building our operator class. We may have our on-time performance baseline may shift a little bit, right? But we still have a target that we think we can hit. So that's what we're doing. That's strategic execution. If you want to dig into the actual metrics, you can go to the dashboard link, check it out. We'll be back in a quarter to talk to you about the metrics again. We'll dig in more with the specifics of things that are going on, but I welcome any specific questions you have for me right now.
Any questions? I really like your energy, especially at the end of the day like this. So.
Oh, nice.
I wrote down the keeping it real. I really like that. It's great to have aspirational goals, but also the realistic goals that are still growth. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do have one question. So back to the foundational success outcome of the increased revenue service levels by 10% from fiscal year 2023 baseline.
Mm-hmm.
How does that compare historically? Was there growth in 2022, or what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. 2023 baseline is, well, let me tell you, so this is one that we've adjusted. We're actually shooting for a little higher than 10%. We're looking at a 2019 baseline, I think. And then, the question is, does this baseline compare to previous years, like pre-COVID, or what's?
Well, I would have to say yes.
Yeah.
Because that would.
Yeah, then this would get us back to the pre-COVID, the target we have is 280,000, or roughly 280,000 service hours. And we were at like 230,000, I think, for the fiscal year 23. So that is actually more than a 10% jump that we're targeting. And then I'd have to look up the 2019. That is the 2019 baseline. 280,000 is the 2019 baseline.
It was returning to the pre-COVID service levels.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Revenue service hours. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And we did, I just to call out realistic, we put 10% in here. I think that if I do the math real quick in my head, that's more than 10% over 2023 baseline, going from 230 to 280 is more than 10%. So if we're saying 10% here, I think this is a good discussion, like if we're realistic about how long that's going to take and the number of operators, and we factored into the long range financial plan. So that's a really thoughtful way to think, like there's a lot of factors that are going to go into that revenue service increase.
Thank you. Pete?
Yeah, thank you. Excellent presentation, Amy. I have one kind of big question. So to preface it, I was on the strategic planning committee in, what was it, 2021? We were doing the first, 2020, 2021. Now we were doing the first iteration of this, and this is round two. And I'm just kind of wondering what have you learned? Is there any like big takeaways you have that the organization has learned from going from having not had a strategic business plan to now we're doing our second iteration, so to speak?
Mhm. That's a great question. I actually kind of want to hear from my colleagues over here about what they've learned. For me, it's you can't stop. Keep going. It's never going to be perfect. I think that we've learned LTD is learning to be agile, which is not an easy thing necessarily in a highly regulated environment, but it is really important in a highly regulated environment to be agile because you have to respond to so many external factors. So I think that's the biggest thing we're learning is how to be adaptable in a volatile environment. But that's like kind of what I'm always learning through life. So that's my perspective.
So I just want to make sure I'm heard. No, I would say that the big thing, and Amy and I have talked about this. This is a great way to, what do I want to say, structurally connect the short run with the long run. So you know, she and I have this great connection because you know she's managed this real short term. I'm managing the long term, and I can see in what we're doing here these steps that we're taking to get there, and it's exciting from my standpoint.
Other colleagues? No.
Thank you. That was an excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
We're talking about keeping fluid when you're changing the language before you report. That's good evidence of that for sure. So, okay. Written reports, Jameson.
Okay, let me turn my camera on here. All right. Yeah, I look weird, I know. So just a couple items to call out in the written reports. One, we continue to see ridership growing on MX. It's about between 13 and 16% depending on day of week. And on our regular fixed route service, it's 13 and 14%. So we're continuing to see some growth there. I also want to call out that in your packet under public safety, there looks like there's an error in the formula that looks at the year-to-date change. So we'll go ahead and get that corrected in this report. All of the numbers are understated because of this error. So we are seeing more activity on our fare validations, and we are seeing more activity with our public safety folks having to handle different incidents out in the system. So we want to make sure that's accurate. I do want to circle back. I forgot to highlight two things earlier in my report. One, you know, you just heard from Amy, and you heard from two Amy's today, and John and others. And, you know, we have some strong talent that are early and mid-career here at LTD. But I do want to call out that we have a retiree at the end of the month that dedicated 44 years of his life to LTD. His name is Perry Crawford, and I know he's not with us tonight, but we're going to celebrate him and his longevity serving the community that we have. You know, I had a former boss who told me you only need three things: a bus, someone to drive it, and someone to fix it. And we always honor those that drive it, and sometimes the ones who fix it are behind the scenes. So I just want to call Perry out on 44 years of outstanding work. The other thing I want to mention, I may have mentioned this to you before. We had an incident a few weeks ago, and Amy Reichert was a part of the solution. We had a consultant in here doing training for our ERP system that we're installing, and the staff noticed signs of physical distress with this consultant, and identified that he was having a heart attack, and convinced him to, take the needed help, and they were able to do all the right things. And he spent a few days down at Riverbend, and now he's well. But I did want to call out the team for that as well. I think it's important that while we can't recognize the entire group, as employees of the month, at least how it's written right now, I do want to call out that they all did that work and saved a life, on the property. So with that said, I will take any questions you may have on any of the reports.
Any questions?
I have one. So I could be reading this wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong, the city of Cottage Grove is getting out of the contract that they have with us, correct? They're no longer going to facilitate the funding that currently flows to Southland Mills. Am I correct in that?
Correct. So we're gonna stand in their CFO's shoes and make sure that all the reporting and everything is lined out from that contractor. And they're last I met with Cottage Grove with the previous city manager and the CFO, she had the biggest smile on her face over that arrangement. So I think it'll all work out for everyone.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No? Thank you, Jameson.
No, thank you, and thanks for allowing me to attend remotely. This will not be a regular thing, I can promise you that.
Okay, and are there any other reports? Any other comments? And items for future meetings? Is there anything that you want to bring up in the future? No? Okay. Do we need to do anything with the delegated report, authority report? Okay. Okay. I think, we're like at 5 minutes early, so unless someone wants to sing or dance or something. Oh, Pat, okay.
Yeah. Maybe some poetry.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we're not gonna have that soon. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, I really want to thank all the staff who stay late on these nights. I know you come in your regular time and this is on top of it. So thank you for that. So have safe travels home, Jameson. Good night.